What happens when a beloved artist sits down for what should be a simple interview and instead faces an attack that leaves the entire studio speechless? In just 39 seconds, one comment from a talk show host would ignite a firestorm that would change everything. Teddy Swims walked onto The View set that morning with nothing but good intentions. The soulful singer had been riding a wave of success, his emotional performances touching millions of hearts across the world. His team had arranged this interview to promote his new album, a collection of deeply personal songs about love, loss, and redemption. He was excited. He was ready to share his story. He had no idea what was waiting for him. The audience clapped as Teddy took his seat at the table. Whoopi Goldberg smiled warmly at him from her position. Sonny Hostin nodded in greeting. Sarah Haynes gave him an encouraging wave. Alyssa Farah Griffin seemed genuinely happy to have him there. And then there was Joy Behar, sitting with her arms crossed, wearing an expression that immediately put Teddy on edge. Whoopi started things off gently. "Teddy, welcome to The View. We are so happy to have you here. Your music has been everywhere lately. How does it feel to have this kind of success?" Teddy smiled, his natural warmth shining through. "It feels like a dream, honestly. I spent so many years working, hoping, praying that people would connect with what I do. To see it actually happening, to see people singing these songs back to me at shows, it's everything I ever wanted." Sarah jumped in with enthusiasm. "Your voice is absolutely incredible. When I first heard you sing, I actually got chills. Where does that soulfulness come from?" "Thank you so much," Teddy said, clearly moved by the compliment. "I think it comes from a real place, you know? I've been through a lot in my life. Pain, heartbreak, struggles with my weight, struggles with feeling like I belonged anywhere. When I sing, I'm not trying to impress anyone. I'm just trying to be honest about what I've felt." The audience applauded. Sonny leaned forward with interest. "I love that authenticity. In a world where so much feels fake and manufactured, you're bringing something real. That's powerful." "I appreciate that," Teddy replied. "I never wanted to be anything other than myself. I know I don't look like what people expect a singer to look like. I'm a big guy. I've got tattoos all over. I don't fit the mold. But I learned that trying to be something I'm not was killing me inside. So I just decided to be me and hoped that was enough." That's when Joy Behar decided to speak. Her tone was sharp, cutting through the positive energy in the room like a knife. "Well, speaking of not fitting the mold, let's talk about your past. You had some legal troubles, didn't you? Some run-ins with the law when you were younger?" The atmosphere shifted immediately. Teddy's smile faded slightly. Whoopi glanced at Joy with concern. Alyssa looked uncomfortable, but Teddy handled it with grace. "Yes, I did," he said honestly. "When I was younger, I made some bad choices. I got into some trouble, but I learned from those experiences. They shaped who I am today. I'm not proud of my mistakes, but I'm not going to hide from them either. I think owning your past is part of growing up." It was a mature, thoughtful answer. Most hosts would have respected that vulnerability and moved on. But Joy wasn't done. "So you're basically saying we should just forget about it? Just pretend it didn't happen because you sing pretty songs now?" Teddy blinked, clearly taken aback by the aggression in her voice. "No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that people can change. I'm saying that mistakes don't define your whole life unless you let them." Joy leaned back in her chair with a dismissive wave. "That's convenient. Make some mistakes, face consequences, then get famous, and suddenly everyone's supposed to treat you like a hero. Must be nice." Sonny tried to intervene. "Joy, I think what Teddy is saying is that redemption is possible. That's actually a really important message, especially for young people who might be going through similar struggles." But Joy wasn't interested in hearing it. She kept her focus locked on Teddy, her expression cold. "I'm just saying There are plenty of artists out there who didn't need a redemption arc, who did things the right way from the start. Why should we celebrate someone who had to learn the hard way? The studio fell silent. Even the audience seemed stunned. Teddy sat there, processing what he'd just heard. When he spoke again, his voice was calm but firm. With all due respect, I don't think I'm asking anyone to celebrate me for my mistakes. I'm asking people to listen to my music and decide for themselves if it means something to them. That's all any artist can do. Whoopi nodded in agreement. That's right. And your music clearly does mean something to people. The numbers don't lie. Joy rolled her eyes dramatically. Oh, please. Numbers don't mean quality. Plenty of terrible things are popular. Look at reality TV. Alyssa finally spoke up, her voice carrying a note of frustration. Joy, that's not fair. Teddy's music is beautiful. You can't compare it to reality TV. I can compare it to whatever I want, Joy shot back. This is my show too. Sarah tried to redirect the conversation. Teddy, let's talk about the new album. What can fans expect from this project? Teddy took a breath, clearly trying to reset. The new album is really about vulnerability, about letting people see the real you, even when it's scary, even when you're afraid they won't like what they find. It's about loving yourself enough to be honest. How inspiring, Joy said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Another album about feelings. Groundbreaking. That was the moment something snapped. Not in Teddy, but in the rest of the panel. Whoopi's expression hardened. Sunny shook her head in disbelief. Sarah looked genuinely angry. Alyssa crossed her arms and stared at Joy with barely concealed frustration. Teddy, however, remained composed. You know what? I get it. You don't like me. You don't like my music. That's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. But what I don't understand is why you would invite me here just to tear me down. What's the point of that? Joy leaned forward, her voice rising. The point is that people need to hear the truth. Not everyone who gets famous deserves it. Not everyone who makes a comeback is actually worthy of praise. Sometimes we need to be honest about that. Honest? Teddy repeated, his voice still level, but now carrying an edge. You think this is honesty? This feels like cruelty. There's a difference. Oh, here we go, Joy said, throwing her hands up. I'm the bad guy because I'm not kissing your feet like everyone else. Because I'm actually willing to ask tough questions. Whoopi cut in, her voice firm. Joy, these aren't tough questions. You're being deliberately hurtful. There's no journalism happening here. Joy turned on Whoopi. Don't tell me how to do my job. I've been doing this longer than most people at this table. Then act like it, Whoopi replied coolly. The tension was suffocating. The cameras were still rolling. The audience sat in stunned silence. Teddy looked around the table, taking in the chaos his simple interview had become. Joy turned back to Teddy, her expression hardening further. Let me ask you something. Do you think you're special? Do you think your little sob story makes you more interesting than the thousands of other singers out there trying to make it? Teddy stared at her for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but powerful. No, I don't think I'm special. I think I'm lucky. Lucky that people connected with my music. Lucky that I got a second chance to do what I love. Lucky that most people in this world are kinder and more understanding than you're being right now. The audience erupted in applause. It wasn't planned. It wasn't prompted. It was pure, spontaneous support for a man who was handling an impossible situation with dignity. Joy's face flushed red. Excuse me? You don't get to come on this show and insult me. I'm not insulting you, Teddy said calmly. I'm responding to you. There's a difference. You've spent the last 10 minutes insulting me, my music, my past, my character. I've been nothing but respectful. But you know what? I don't have to sit here and take this. Sarah reached out toward Teddy. Teddy, please don't leave. This isn't representative of how we all feel. Sunny nodded quickly. She's right. Some of us actually appreciate what you do and respect your journey. But Teddy was already standing up, carefully removing his microphone. His movements were deliberate, controlled. He wasn't storming off in anger. He was making a choice. I appreciate that, he said to Sarah and Sunny. I really do. And Whoopi, thank you for trying to keep things civil. Alyssa, thank you for speaking up. But I can't stay somewhere I'm not wanted. I won't give anyone the satisfaction of watching me be disrespected for entertainment. Joy stood up too, her voice sharp and defensive. Oh, so now you're the victim? You can dish it out, but you can't take it? Teddy turned to face her fully. His expression wasn't angry. It was disappointed. I didn't dish out anything. I came here to talk about music. You turned it into something ugly. That's on you, not me. You think you can just walk out of here? Joy demanded. You think that makes you look good? I think it makes me look like someone who knows my worth, Teddy replied simply. Someone who doesn't need validation from people who've already decided not to like me. Whoopi stood up as well, placing a hand on Teddy's arm. You don't have to leave. We can continue this conversation without the hostility. Teddy gave her a sad smile. I appreciate that, Whoopi. I really do. But the damage is done. I can't sit here and pretend everything's okay when it's not. That wouldn't be authentic, and authenticity is all I've got. He turned to the audience, his expression softening. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your support. If you want to hear what I actually have to say, the music is out there. Judge for yourself whether it means something. The audience gave him a standing ovation. People were cheering. Some were even crying. It was clear whose side they were on. Joy's face contorted with rage. This is unbelievable. You people are applauding someone who's walking out on a professional interview. Do you understand how disrespectful that is? Alyssa finally had enough. She stood up, her voice ringing with conviction. Disrespectful? Joy, you've been disrespectful from the moment he sat down. He didn't walk out on a professional interview. He walked out on an ambush. How dare you? Joy hissed at Alyssa. I don't need a lecture from you about professionalism. Apparently you do, Alyssa shot back. Because what you just did wasn't journalism. It wasn't even good television. It was just mean. Sunny stood up as well, adding her voice to the chorus. I have to agree with Alyssa. Teddy came here in good faith. He was open, honest, vulnerable, and you attacked him for it. Why? What was the purpose? Joy looked around the table, realizing she was completely isolated. Even Sarah, usually the peacemaker, was shaking her head in disapproval. I was doing my job, Joy insisted, but her voice had lost some of its conviction. Someone has to ask the hard questions. There's a difference between hard questions and hard-heartedness, Whoopi said quietly. You crossed a line today, Joy, and everyone in this room knows it. Teddy was already at the edge of the set, but he paused one last time. He looked back at Joy, and when he spoke, there was no malice in his voice, only truth. I hope whatever you're going through that made you treat me like that gets better. I really do. Because hurting people doesn't make you powerful. It just makes you hurt. And with that, he walked off the set. The cameras captured every step. The audience continued to applaud. Several people were standing, showing their support for a man who had refused to sacrifice his dignity for anyone. Joy stood at the table, surrounded by her co-hosts, who were all looking at her with varying degrees of disappointment and frustration. The silence that followed Teddy's exit was deafening. Finally, Whoopi spoke, her voice heavy with exhaustion. We need to go to commercial. As the show cut away, the studio remained in chaos. Producers were rushing around. The other hosts were talking in hushed, urgent tones. Joy sat back down, her expression unreadable, but her body language defensive. Sarah leaned over to Sunny and whispered, but her microphone was still on, so everyone heard it. That was painful to watch. He handled it better than I would have. Sunny nodded. He was incredibly gracious considering what he was dealing with. I felt terrible for him. Alyssa looked directly at Joy. We need to talk about what just happened. That can't happen again. Joy's eyes flashed. Don't tell me what can and can't happen. You all act like I committed some crime. I ask questions. That's my job. Your job is to interview guests, not to berate them, Whoopi said firmly. There's a way to challenge someone's views or ask about their past without making it personal. You made it personal. He made it personal when he implied I was cruel, Joy argued. You were being cruel, Sunny said flatly. Call it what it was, Joy. From the moment he sat down, you were hostile. We all saw it. The audience saw it. America saw it. Joy opened her mouth to respond, but Whoopi held up a hand. Not now. We have a show to finish. But yes, we will be talking about this. The commercial break ended. The show returned. But the energy was completely different now. Whoopi addressed the camera with a professionalism that barely masked the tension. We want to apologize to Teddy Swims and to our audience for what just transpired. That's not the kind of discourse we aim to have on the show. Everyone deserves to be treated with respect, especially our guests. Joy sat silent, her jaw clenched. The other hosts nodded in agreement with Whoopi's words. The rest of the show limped along, but nobody was paying attention to the other segments. The only thing anyone would remember from that episode was the moment when a talented artist stood up for himself against someone who had underestimated his strength. In the hallway backstage, Teddy was surrounded by staff members offering apologies and support. His manager was on the phone, likely dealing with the fallout, but Teddy himself seemed calm, tired, but calm. One of the producers approached him tentatively. Teddy, I am so sorry. That should never have happened. We had no idea she was going to go after you like that. Teddy nodded, accepting the apology. I know. It's not your fault. Sometimes people show you who they really are, and you just have to accept it and move on. Is there anything we can do? The producer asked desperately. Teddy thought for a moment, then shook his head. No, I just want to go home, honestly. This was supposed to be fun. It wasn't. That's okay. Not everything works out the way you hope. Another staff member, a young woman who looked close to tears, spoke up. For what it's worth, I think you're amazing. Your music got me through a really dark time. Thank you for that. Teddy's expression softened completely. He reached out and squeezed her hand gently. Thank you for telling me that. That's why I do this. For people like you. Not for people who want to tear me down. As Teddy left the building, his phone was already blowing up. Social media was on fire. Clips of the interview were spreading like wildfire. But the narrative wasn't what Joy might have expected. People weren't criticizing Teddy for walking out. They were praising him for standing up for himself. They were condemning the treatment he'd received. Back in the studio, as the show wrapped up, the hosts sat in uncomfortable silence. Joy gathered her things quickly, clearly eager to escape, but Whoopi's voice stopped her. Joy, my office. Now. It wasn't a request. Joy's shoulders tensed, but she nodded curtly and followed Whoopi off the set. Sarah, Sunny, and Alyssa remained at the table, looking at each other with a mixture of relief and concern. That was one of the most uncomfortable things I've ever been part of, Sarah said quietly. He didn't deserve any of that, Sunny agreed. He was so genuine, so open, and she just attacked him. Alyssa nodded slowly. I'm glad we spoke up. We couldn't just sit there and let it happen without saying something. I just hope he's okay, Sarah said. I hope this doesn't make him regret being vulnerable. The world needs more people like him, not fewer. In Whoopi's office, a very different conversation was taking place. The moderator sat behind her desk, her expression serious. "What was that, Joy?" Whoopi asked, her voice tired. Joy crossed her arms defensively. "I was doing what I always do, asking questions other people are too scared to ask." "That wasn't questioning. That was attacking. There's a difference, and you know it." "He couldn't handle a little pushback," Joy argued. "Maybe he's not ready for this level of fame if he can't deal with tough interviews." Whoopi shook her head slowly. "You're not hearing me. This wasn't about him not being able to handle it. He handled it beautifully. He was respectful, honest, and dignified, even when you were being hostile. The problem wasn't his response. The problem was your approach." "So now I'm the villain," Joy said bitterly. "You're not a villain," Whoopi replied. "But you were wrong today. And the sooner you can admit that, the better it will be for everyone." Joy stood up abruptly. "I don't have to listen to this. I've earned my place here. I've earned the right to conduct interviews however I see fit." "You've also earned the responsibility that comes with that place," Whoopi countered. "And part of that responsibility is treating people with basic human decency. Even when you disagree with them. Even when you don't personally like them." Joy walked to the door, then paused with her hand on the handle. Maybe he should have thought about basic human decency before he broke the law all those years ago. Whoopi's expression hardened. "Everyone deserves a second chance, Joy. Everyone. Even you, when you inevitably need one." Joy left without another word, the door closing behind her with a decisive click. Meanwhile, across social media, the conversation was exploding. Hashtags were trending. Think pieces were being written in real time. Video clips were being analyzed frame by frame. And overwhelmingly, the consensus was clear. Teddy Swims had walked into that studio as a successful artist. He walked out as something more, a symbol of grace under pressure, a reminder that you don't have to accept disrespect, even from powerful people. A living example of the strength it takes to walk away from toxicity. One viral tweet captured the mood perfectly. "Teddy Swims just taught a masterclass in self-respect. Know your worth. Don't let anyone make you feel small. Walk away from tables where you're not valued." Another read, "Joy Behar really thought she was doing something today. Instead, she showed the world exactly who she is, while Teddy Swims showed us who he is. I know which person I'd rather support." The View's social media accounts were flooded with comments. Most were supportive of Teddy and critical of Joy's behavior. Some called for apologies. Others called for more serious consequences. But all agreed that something significant had happened. In the days that would follow, think pieces would be written. Other talk shows would discuss the incident. Industry insiders would weigh in. But in that moment, as Teddy rode home in the back of a car, watching the city pass by, he felt something unexpected. Peace. He had stood up for himself. He had refused to be diminished. He had walked away with his dignity intact. And sometimes, that's all you can do. His phone buzzed with a text from his manager. "You handled that perfectly. Everyone is on your side. This is actually going to be good for you." Teddy smiled slightly, but didn't respond. He didn't do it to be on anyone's side or to gain anything. He did it because it was right. Because he had spent too many years of his life accepting treatment he didn't deserve, and he wasn't going to do it anymore. The car pulled up to his house. As Teddy got out, he looked up at the evening sky. Tomorrow, he would wake up and continue making music. Continue being honest. Continue being himself. Because that's all he ever wanted to do in the first place. And somewhere across the city, in studios and living rooms and offices, people were learning an important lesson. That talent and kindness can coexist. That success doesn't mean you have to accept mistreatment. That walking away is sometimes the bravest thing you can do. The interview that was supposed to be a simple promotional appearance had become something much bigger. A cultural moment, a conversation starter, a line in the sand, And at the center of it all was a man who just wanted to sing his songs and be true to himself. A man who proved that you can be strong without being loud, that you can stand up for yourself without tearing others down. That grace and backbone aren't opposites, but partners. What happens when a beloved artist faces an attack that leaves an entire studio speechless? He shows the world what real strength looks like. And in doing so, he reminds everyone watching that they deserve respect too. That they have the power to walk away from people and situations that don't honor their worth. That's what happened when Teddy Swims sat down for what should have been a simple interview. That's what happens when someone underestimates the quiet strength of a person who knows exactly who they are.